Hey, everybody, welcome to the Y Project 911, presented by the F.O.O.L Foundation. Today's episode number 6, The F.O.O.L Fraternal Order of Leatherheads, with the president of the International, Ben Fleagle. Well, Ben is a battalion chief in Alaska with over 35 years on the job. He founded and he ran the first F.O.O.L chapter in Alaska, the farthest north F.O.O.L. From 2015 to 2020, he was a secretary for the International, and then in 2020, he took over his role as the president, and he's still our president. So thank you very much for coming on the show, Ben. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Just reaching my 35th year of experience, as you said that, I thought, wow, 3.5 decades is a very long time. But yeah, I'm president for the past 7 years coming up on 7 years. Took over in 2020 from Richie Stack.
It's an amazing organization, and unfortunately, I don't know if all the other first responders have something like the F.O.O.L s, but we're fortunate as firefighters to have an organization like yours. So Alaska, huh? We know the internet is not great in Alaska. We figured that out over the last hour. Let's talk about how you wound up in Alaska and what it's like being a firefighter in Alaska.
How I wound up in Alaska. I was working in Orange County as a firefighter. I was paid call with Orange County, and I was in the city of Tustin on the second due engine out of Station 21. And I was there for 5 years. And during that time, I managed to get full-time with the military at Tustin Marine Base because I was a veteran. And I was testing, trying to get full-time. And so for me, it was a way of getting benefits and taking care of my daughter. And then I met my wife of 30 years, and she didn't want to live in California. So I started casting a net out farther north. I think I tested in 1 or 2 spots, but certainly nobody wanted to hire Californians. I even tested in Montana in 2 different places. And the folks at the Labor Department in Montana told me, well, you're not from Montana. We're not going to hire you, but you can test. And so anyway, an opportunity came available for Alaska, and my wife said yes. And it kind of shocked me, but I thought, well, what is it like to live in Alaska? And, the snow and the pine trees and the Arctic world and how cool it must be. The chief had worked at our department earlier, and he was looking for someone that he knew, one of the old guys that he could convince to come up. None of them were stupid enough to take the job. And they said, but that young guy Fleagle, he's got a family he's putting together. He'll go for it. And the fire chief I worked for, who I didn't know paid any attention to me at all, called me into his office and said, if I'm going to recommend anybody to Robbie, the chief up in Fairbanks, he said it would be you. I've watched you. I've watched the work you do, and I'll put your name for it if that's what you want. And I told him yes. Within a few months, we were living in Alaska, and I thought I'd made a massive mistake because it was cold, it was ugly, it was an oil town, more based on the military and the university and trying to draw people in. So it was a rugged town still, and I thought my wife would get off the plane and take one look, and that'd be the end of our short marriage. But after 4 or 5 years, she let me know that she had no intention of going back if anything happened to me. By that time, I had spotted the university fire department and knew that I wanted to work with them.
I think that leads into like what we're talking about next is the F.O.O.L s, right? It was your work ethic. It was who you are. We were F.O.O.L s before we even knew we were firemen. We were F.O.O.L s. So
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, when I looked up the definition of the F.O.O.L s, I was back at the National Fire Academy. I think it was 2002, and I met this guy I liked a lot. I liked his attitude. I liked everything about him. And he wore this shirt that said F.O.O.L s, was Charlotte Metro F.O.O.L s. And I thought, I like the logo. I like his attitude. I like his behavior. And I asked him about, what's this T-shirt? What's this logo? And he goes, why don't you find out? And when I first read the F.O.O.L s mission statement, it was organized a little differently back then, but it's still there in our statement. My heart just leaped.
I've had the good fortune, like we talked about a little bit. I've had the good fortune of working with a lot of the founding fathers here in Orlando, in the Central Florida area, the Walt Lewises and the Bart Simpsons and the Dave Gallaghers and the Mike Gilberts and all those guys. They're phenomenal people. And I got to kind of hear the story from Walt of how, they were going to classes and everybody thought they were F.O.O.L s for paying for themselves to go to classes. And that's kind of where it came from. But let's hear from you, the president. It's awesome.
The F.O.O.L s is the heart of the service side, the public servant in the firefighter. I think fools have always existed. When volunteer firefighters were the majority, it was a robust breed of not only firefighter, but families as well. And I can remember a volunteer family I had contact with when I was a young man, just before going in the military. And the whole family would get involved. They all had volunteer jackets that they would wear, and the dad was the firefighter, but everybody else was a part of the fire department in some way, shape, or form. And there was a lot of enthusiasm in it. And I think those were fools that they just didn't have the name. People that understood that to get the younger generation to do what you need them to do, you don't berate them and attack them and humiliate them. You guide them and mentor them. And the best fools we know, the ones that just humble us when we're around them, are all those types of people. Whether you're talking about Captain Dugan or Mike Stallings or many firefighters I've met over the years that I don't even remember their names. It wasn't about, with those guys, it's not about who you work with, how long you've been on the job, or how busy, how many fires you get a year. They don't care about that. What they care about is who you are as a person and whether you honor the profession and that drive to be better at it and to serve. I really think my favorite way of describing it is Captain Dugan's description, where we're going to go down the dark hallway, and anybody that makes that dark hallway with me is my brother and my sister. It's two eyes in the mask, and that means that nothing else matters. You're right by me, and we're going to do this job together. That's my brother. That's my sister. Doesn't matter what your religion is. Doesn't matter what your skin is. Doesn't matter what your preferences are. It's the fact that you're doing the job and you're right next to me, and we're going to suffer together. And that creates what we call brotherhood, what we call sisterhood. It's the esprit de corps the Marine Corps talks about, which the thing you'll hear most often is people say, well, where is this brotherhood I always hear about? If you're not suffering, then brotherhood is hard to grasp. And Chad Berg is a good friend of mine down in Snohomish County. He was attending a funeral at one point, and we were talking afterwards, and he was frustrated because so few people seemed to understand that not many people showed up. Not everybody was in Class A's. He was frustrated about it. And he made the comment, if you're not feeling a burden doing this job, you're probably not doing it right. And I think that's a great way to summarize it. This job should cost you. This job, it's called service for a reason. And the fools embrace that. Whereas a large part of the fire service, especially in this current generation, does not. And I think the fools are as vital today as they were in 1995 and right after 9/11. That explosion of enthusiasm by that generation has passed with their retirements and their families growing, and so chapters struggle in those moments. But the young people will serve and they will devote themselves if we lead the way. And we've got to hang on to who we are and keep the organization thriving, because other than that, it's just going to become a job. And you can see that in every fire station across the country, where they don't understand that it's not about us. And I've always said, I'm not here for me.
Volunteers versus career versus whatever. If you're a firefighter, you can be a fool. So we need to let everybody know that. It's not about whether you're a small department volunteer
Absolutely.
or you're a large city fireman, metro fireman. You are a fool if you want to be a fool. And if you don't have a chapter, we'll talk about in a little bit, start a chapter, because it's an amazing thing. The fools are, like you said, we are the brotherhood, right? And we always talk about brotherhood, and you hear that all the time. Oh, the brotherhood's dead. Look at the brotherhood. What brotherhood? But there is brotherhood in the fools. You call a fool anywhere in the country, and they'll meet you for dinner. You'll stay at their house. That's what the fools is about. And it's a vital part of the fire service in general. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate you guys as the board for sure, and supporting all the local chapters. How many local chapters around the country, around the nation, do you think there are around the world, really?
Well, it fluctuates every year between roughly about 170 to 190. There was a Canadian chapter in Nova Scotia
Okay, nice.
area, and that's been
Wow.
absorbed by New England Fools. So that's the only double nation chapter is New England Fools. And so that was pretty cool that happened. And then we had During the wars, we had chapters down there in Iraq and Afghanistan, Kabul, and I forget where in Iraq. Kabul was the strong one that existed most often. There was a chapter in the Germany, Belgium area of Europe. Our latest triumph is a chapter in Chile. They ran into us at FDIC last year, and we spent the past year bringing them on board, and we hope to see them at FDIC again and greet them again. Those are some hardworking guys down there, and they have tradition. They're all volunteer. They don't get paid. I don't believe anybody in the country gets paid, and they date back to the 1860s, and they still wear their old uniform.
My second guest was HD, the voice. He's the voice of the Firefighter Challenge, the announcer, and he was like, "Listen, you get 25 different countries, but everybody has the same mentality, the same attitude, the same care for servitude. So the fools are the same way." What leads me to my next topic is the acronyms. To understand who the fools are and what we're about and what we do, you have to understand the acronyms. So if you've ever seen, like, my email says, EGH, FTB, or FTM, everybody goes home, remember the fallen brothers, protect the Brotherhood, and for the men, or the other one.
Or the other one. I prefer the other
Yeah.
one, actually. When they changed that cost them. We had people leave our chapter over it that's because at the motivation to form the chapter was a bit of a FU to the leadership in the area to say, we will work together, we will train together, we don't care about the borders, and we want to serve people, and your silly, petty little arguments are not going to stop us. There's several acronyms that we traditionally use: for the men, protect the Brotherhood, remember fallen brothers,
Do the right thing.
keep the faith, everybody goes home, and DTRT, do the right thing. And the reason they're important is because as the organization formed, these were the statements from particular influential firefighters in the group or that influenced the group. And so it's a heritage of the organization. It's like people talk about John Hancock's signature on the Constitution. That is the Gilbert, Stallings, Walt Lewis, Bart Simpson. That's their stamp, Kenny Ireland and Captain Dugan and others that are not considered founders, like Bob Pressler and just many others that they learned from and cherished.
Yeah.
That's the living, breathing heart of those people and how they did their job. And so when you do like you're talking about and put that in your email or on a shirt or in a signature or in a logo, you're talking about what we believe in. For the men, it can be for the women too. Our language does not express what that's trying to say. But the original one was to defy people who would harm a firefighter, either through negligence or intent. Everything from the war years where booby traps were set to property owners who don't care about their property enough or the people living in their property enough to provide smoke detectors or fix alarm systems or sprinkler systems. The firefighters that get injured going en route to a false alarm, those were called mutts. And it was the most derogatory term that could be used in professional settings. And even that proved to be too much for a lot of people. And then protect the Brotherhood, this spirit of who we are. It needs to be nurtured and fostered. And that's probably what keeps me busiest as the president. My job is a lot grittier. I spend a lot of time calling presidents up and saying, what do you think you're doing? And it's not because they're offending me. It's because their behavior is dishonoring to the founding fools and the organization itself. And that has to be done. That absolutely has to be done. And the president can't flinch from it, that it's starting to calm down a little bit. They're getting the message that if you want to wear this T-shirt, if you want to be in charge of a chapter, you better have your ethics figured out and realize that we are standing up in front of the entire nation saying that we will go the extra mile. We will hold ourselves to a higher standard. And that's important because the general American public doesn't believe anybody does have a standard that they actually live up to. And many firefighters say, yeah, the department can say whatever it wants. The chief can say whatever he wants, but it don't matter. And we matter. We have to make sure that when we say something, it matters, that people understand that the fools mean it. And the fools will live their lives in their profession to serve others and that includes each other. So that's what Protect the Brotherhood is all about. And then after that, you got Keep the Faith. It goes very deep. And I think a lot of firefighters have a different way of looking at that one based on what they believe the faith is. Some people refer to the Brotherhood, others to just how we associate with each other, that act of taking care of a brother in need. And to me, it's all those things, but it's also I love the quote from the New York fire chief who said, "Your act of bravery was when you raised your right hand. Everything after that, after you put that shield on your chest, everything after that is your duty." And I feel very strongly about that. So remember Fallen Brothers? I don't even have to explain that one. We got the 25th year of 9/11 coming up on us, and FDIC is gonna several different events throughout the week. And I know, and I sympathize, and I understand with every firefighter out there who just, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of funerals. I'm tired of wearing this uniform to mourn for people. I don't want to do it anymore. And some of it's being tired of being aware that you're the only one that gives a shit. The exhaustion from that. It doesn't compare to the exhaustion that surviving New York firefighters feel. Doesn't even come close. I see Captain Dugan is still leading the charge on that. And he lost a lot of friends. So if he can do it, I can do it. And we've got to teach the young generation why it matters so much. Fighting fire in Alaska is suffering. 40 below hurts really bad. And forget 50 below, because after 40 below, it's just pain. The colder it gets, the more miserable you are. And you learn who your brother is in those moments. I can remember a particular fire where I was hypothermic already, and I was exhausted, and I was being asked to continue working. And I turned to a brother from another department. He was a F.O.O.L. and had suffered quite a bit himself, having lost his family in an accident. And I looked at him as if to say, are you good to go a little longer? And he said, as long as university's staying, Wainwright is staying as well. So we kept working. That's brotherhood. And that same firefighter, as I came out of a power plant fire, my eyes were covered in soot. I wore my mask, but somehow I still had just soot everywhere. And it's coal sludge. And I was sitting on the tailboard of the truck trying to cool off, got my jacket open, and we were all just exhausted. And suddenly I felt these hands grip my face, and thumbs started to wipe soot and coal sludge out of my eyes, and cool water was poured on my face. And the same guy who has suffered way more than I have, and he was just bathing my face.
That's
cleaning my
brotherhood right
eyes up.
there. And go back to the New York thing.
And that's brotherhood.
I don't really go. I feel guilty about it the way you put it,
Yeah.
but I've never gone to 9/11, and the reason is because my buddies died there, and I didn't want to go. I'll go to New York other times and go say hi to the people and their families and stuff. But I was on honor guard for 20 years, and after 20 years, I'm getting ready to retire soon. But after 20 years, I had turned in my stuff, and I'm like, I've been to enough firefighter. My wife's a police officer. I've been to enough firefighters and police officers' funerals. I've done it.
Well, that's what I mean by sympathizing is,
Yeah.
and I've never been to New York for 9/11. We hold our own event here in Alaska, and people go, why do you even care? You weren't there, and they don't understand that my life as a fool changed my whole world because I know those guys personally that are still suffering. And I feel like I knew many of the ones that died because we have said their names for so long, and I've read about their stories, and I've got books on my shelf here that are about those guys.
That's the why right there, wiping, your brother's face, picking your brother up and saying, let's go, let's charge. We can do this. Those are the things that, the public and the regular people and a lot of the new people don't understand, because we do have it. We're better staffed now. We're better paid now. Where the stations are better. You have the McMansion stations with the individual rooms and stuff. They don't know what it's like to sleep in a fire station that's the size of my hotel room right now. They don't get it. And we tell them, and some of that is up to us. Some of that is up to us as the senior guys. And I say it in almost every episode, like, as senior firefighters, as admin, as battalion chiefs, as, senior people, we have to explain that to them and keep that going. That's part of what the F.O.O.L.S do with the acronyms. And, I'm going to circle back to FTM because it's important for everybody to understand, if we're going to talk about the why, we have to understand the why. And FTM is F the mutts. I won't say the word, but frig the mutts, you know? And if you don't know what a mutt is, then you're probably a mutt.
Yeah. I got no
Right.
problem with that at
So,
all.
and they're public that set traps for us. They're people that don't take care of their properties. There are also politicians that don't take care of us. And there are some firefighters that screw their brothers and sisters over or mutts. It's important for people to know that. That's part of the why, you know?
Yes. Yes. It's a silent part of the
Yeah.
why, but it's still very much present in the hardcore fools. And I think we can debate another time about whether it was right to pull it out of there or not. EGH, everybody goes home.
Right.
That suffered some backlash for a while because people were like, well, but that's not true. But it's the idea that, especially as a leader, that we do everything possible to get everybody home and not end up with them in a casket. And then DTRT. DTRT is a deep seated one that every firefighter has to work out doing the right thing. And have that in their mind to do that every shift, every tour, every hour, every moment of your day as a firefighter is doing the right thing. And we have plenty of examples where that's not the case, and we have to push hard to
Oh, yeah.
have an effect.
How we change things is do the right thing. I just talked about it with Anthony Avilo. Sorry, I always say his name wrong. He's going to yell at me again. But I talked about it with Anthony. And, okay, so that's not your culture, your department, right? Because if it's not your culture, your department's not going to do it. It's not your culture to get up on a roof and cut it. They're not going to get up on the roof and cut it because the chief says, hey, go cut a roof. They're going to be like, what are you talking? We're not listening to him. So make that your culture to do the right things. Fill your bottle in the morning. If that's not your culture, who cares if you get laughed at? Do the right thing and then continue to do the right things, and people will follow that culture. And that's part of what the Fools are and what we stand for, right?
Yeah, and I was thinking about that when we talk about supporting chapters and training. There's an element to that where the department clashes with Fools' values and ethics.
We hold a lot of amazing trainings. The South Florida Fools, I'm so proud of them, man. You know what? I took over. If you know the history of the South Florida Fools, it started after 9/11 with Salzano and the boys, Fort Lauderdale City, Miami, and those guys got together, and they formed the Fools, and they got big. They had convention. Then Quilter and Zinkel and Matty Johnson and them took it over, and then I was on the job, and I think I was a training captain. I looked around and I was like, where's the Fools? What are they doing? Because I got 20, 30 people going to Orlando Fire Conference, and they should be Fools. Like, these kids are paying their own way to go up to fire conferences. They should be part of the Fools, but I don't know what's going on with them. So I made some phone calls, and everybody told me I was crazy for starting the chapter back up. But I was persistent, and I wanted it. I wanted it for the younger people on the job that were hungry and were going to these fire conferences, but they couldn't get in because they sell out fast. Fort Lauderdale Expo sells out fast, for Orlando Fire Conference. So I'm like, let's bring that type of caliber training to South Florida, and let's bring the South Florida instructors back to South Florida, because we're going to other places to hear South Florida instructors. It doesn't make any sense to me. So those were the things we did, and we clashed with some of the departments. Some of the departments refused to send people. They were like, no, we're not doing that. And then a lot of them were really good to us, and gave us training facilities and trucks and instructors and stuff. So through that brought a cohesiveness of all of the department's training divisions kind of got together, and now that still continues today. All of those people still train together, and one person has a live burn, and all the other departments LFTIs show up.
Yeah, and we've had that success as well, and it does go up and down. It goes up and down with the leadership of the chapter, and some who are really good at training are not really good when it comes to interacting with the authorities in the department, because we're all type A, and we all tend to we'll attack a wall if that's what we need to do, and sometimes it's not done with the right kind of finesse and in the right spirit. And and the flip side is also true. There are some departments out there where the leadership is not going to cooperate, no matter how you phrase the argument or position your chapter. They're just going to be against you simply because of the name. And the Fools rose up in a swell of enthusiasm for initiating training that the department was not providing. And many chapters had, a little 4 or 5 man team that went out and taught around their area. And some of those have grown into huge things, and they've been very integral with such things as Brothers in Battle and the Art of Firemanship. The Wichita Hot is a good example of something that came about because of Fools, and that stuff's all over the country now. So the Fools kind of rode that swell of independent training away from FDIC and around the country. And at all that time, we've had to negotiate and protect our relationships. And it doesn't matter whether it was dealing with FDIC and fire engineering or with individual training events around the state. Firefighters get hot under the collar with each other. They have long memories. They get pissed off, and if being from Alaska, you just stand around going, man, everybody has got a history with somebody and they're all ticked at each other. And I'm amazed that they get anything done. And I spent a lot of time. In fact, I think I became involved at the international level because of my attitude of peacemaker. I'm not involved in your squabble. Why are you guys, you're both firefighters. You're both trying to do the same thing. Why are we squabbling? And, I think that was viewed by the East Coast people I was meeting as a positive thing to pull in, because firefighters have a very hard time pulling out of that argument and going off. In the fire chief's eye, he's going to steer clear of the Fools chapters because we do have members who are very aggressive, and many of them are very young and really enthusiastic. And we know over 20 years of doing this, we know that you can be safer by knowing your job better. But to know your job better, you have to be aggressive in getting after it. And that has to be blended with maturity. I've mentioned the Snohomish guys before. Ladder 72, back when the department was just by itself as District 7, they gained a huge reputation for truck work um, simply by being willing to discipline themselves. Their chiefs were not any different from any others around the country. Very liability oriented, worried about, well, if we have this truck company that suddenly wants to cut roofs again, we don't do that anymore. We have positive pressure fans, and the truck company members educated themselves. They traveled. They were typical fools, spending their own money to get good training. They came back up and they started pushing, and they successfully pushed by saying, we'll decide whether the roof is safe, and when it's not, we'll be the first ones to say so, and we'll get off. And by protecting themselves, they earned a reputation that the department trusted, and that spread throughout the area. That's how in my mind, that's how you successfully challenge the status quo, is by being mature about it, being professional, knowing your job, and keeping your temper under control. Because as soon as we show our temper, as soon as we lose control of our behaviors, we allow one of our members to go a little too far,
Right.
we're losing the argument at that point, because it's just fuel for the fire.
We might as well just leave now because it's over. Nobody's listening anymore. Once you start yelling and being an idiot, nobody's listening to you anymore. And it just ruins your reputation, and your tarnishes what we're trying to accomplish. I was stuck with it, to be honest with you, when people were like, yeah, you guys can't have a
when
countywide training in a strip mall. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. Watch me. Hold my beer.
And when a chief loses their temper, it costs them, reputation wise. It may cost them a little bit. It will certainly cost them with the troops. But when the Fools lose their temper irrationally, we've lost the battleground, because it's the chief's battleground. It's not ours. And we're trying to win some territory in his trust. And the fastest way to lose that trust is by behaving like a bunch of Mongo monkeys. And I say this having been I was the Fool of the Year in 2013 when Captain Dugan had just finished saying that we needed to change our reputation for being a bunch of drinking alcoholics and partygoers. Showed up to receive the award, and I was inebriated because some Florida guys got a hold of me.
That sounds appropriate.
Because they knew I was going to get the award, and they got me pretty sloshed beforehand.
Part of the reputations that I had to fight against. And there were some departments that were like, yeah, no, I remember the fools that trashed hotel rooms and stuff. We don't want any part of that organization. And it's a shame, because it's really a great organization. And, Max Lashin, he was, I think, Fool of the Year or something last year, right? He was a lieutenant in Tamarack, and he took over for me as the president, and they're having, went through a little rough patch, which we'll talk about in a second. But now they just had an amazing training, a full day of training, and everybody was out there, and they had roof ops, and they had live fire, and they had everything going on. They had 50 people out there. It was amazing. So I'm rooting for him to keep going and pushing forward with the chapter, because it's great to have that Fools chapter, because South Florida Fools got a little popular, then the Palm Beach County Fools picked back up, and now they're kicking it, And I'm actually up here in Polk County now. There's an upstart chapter, County Metro Fools, and I'm going to teach a class tomorrow with Jimmy Myers and Dennis Riley and Jimmy Russo. So, it's great stuff, man. It's awesome. I really, as a young firefighter, didn't understand what the Fools were. I had heard about them, and then a couple people from my department that were well respected told me, hey, you got to come up and be part of the Fools. From there I met, Matty Johnson and Quilter and, Danny Moran and all of these amazing people that Salzano and all these amazing people that I love to be around. I think we have to give a shout out to Matty Johnson for writing the toast, right? Yeah. There's Fools chapters all over the country and all over the world. And, there's people that don't know how to start a chapter. Since we're talking about the why, give us a why, like how to start a chapter. If you're interested and there's nothing in your area.
To establish a chapter, the first step is to go online. I've got it right here to make sure that I'm not talking sideways here. Locate a chapter is what it's called. Is a map of the world that shows it's broken down into the 5 regions. We adopted the FEMA region style. You can find if there's a chapter close to you. And if that's the case, you can contact them and you can see if they're open to membership. And it's really important to remember that each chapter has the right by the articles to decide whether or not someone becomes a member. Because some chapters their entire membership is within a large department. Some chapters are a conglomerate of, like mine, are from around the county or borough, as we call it. And, each chapter is able to handle membership differently. Some chapters probably still do it $5 at our Brotherhood bash and you're into the chapter. That'll grow a chapter fast, but it crashes because it's too big and it overwhelms the leadership and they're unable to maintain it. Other chapters, our chapter, the Farthest North Fools, we adopted the sponsorship model that we found in a lot of the early chapters. So people have to show an interest. They're picked up by another fool, much like you mentioned, and encouraged to participate. And then someone's got to speak for them and say, yeah, I'll put my name down on this guy. And that can backfire as well. But all these things play into how a chapter is formed and shaped in the culture of that chapter. And to actually establish the chapter, you would go to the website, you contact there's another whole spot starting a chapter, and there are the contacts there for Dana Larkin and Dave Dubowski.
Oh, nice.
Treasurer and secretary. They've just brought up a brand new database. And so once you have 5 members in order to form your e-board, you can sign up on the database, you pay the chapter initiation fee, you come up with your chapter name, and all that has to be worked out with respect to any chapter that might already be in existence. And that is, we're not interested in more chapters, we're interested in quality chapters. And that's been our attitude for as long as I've been on the International, for 12 years. Forming a chapter and maintaining it is very difficult. The e-board from the beginning has to be people that can be trusted, especially the treasurer. So you have to build your e-board as a good foundation for the chapter. And then I would advise, once you are up and running with the International and you have your name and you've got your chapter established, you also have to know your why. Why did you form this chapter? Did you form it for the Brotherhood, or did you form it for the training, or did you form it for both? Because some chapters excel at the Brotherhood. Some chapters excel at the training because they've got all the resources in their area necessary to make it work. Other chapters, are formed in agricultural or rural areas, and they struggle to meet that training desire, but they might be really good at Brotherhood. They might be really good at fundraising. So understanding what your strengths are very important, and understanding where you're weak. And I'll mention the 1-800 board up. If they're in your area, and developing a relationship with them can work twofold. They're always looking for retired firefighters to work for them, and they are encouraged by the corporation to find ways to support training, whether it's through training materials or providing your rehab food or something to that effect. They like to be involved with Fools chapters, and not every region has a 1-800 board up chapter, but where they do exist, they should be pursued. And Dana and Dave are really good at doing their jobs. They set a chapter up efficiently and they're very helpful. And that database is just awesome. Nobody gets paid on the International E-Board, and the secretary and treasurer do an enormous amount of work. And when I was secretary, I had to cut out the cards. I had to laminate them. I had to trim them. I mean, it was arts and crafts for my family.
I remember clearly because I think I called you like, hey, where's my chapter cards? Everybody's asking me.
But Rusty Ricker was really on my case all the time. But he'd send me 20
Yeah.
applications at a time.
The Why Project 911 is presented by the F.O.O.L.S Foundation, and they were instrumental in helping me get the South Florida's up and running. And like you said, instructor lunches and dinners and stuff like that, breakfast for my classes. They helped us get the 501c3 up. They give away scholarships every year at their Heroes Dinner, and 3 of them are for the F.O.O.L.S. Actually, 4 of them, because there's 3 for South Florida F.O.O.L.S. and 1 for the Palm Beach County F.O.O.L.S. that we're associated with. And, they do amazing things. So look for organizations like that. Thank you so much for coming on. What is some final thoughts? What's a why about the F.O.O.L.S that we can take away from this episode?
Why about the F.O.O.L.S? When I mentioned, I'm not here for me, I am here for we, and we are here for them. That is the crux of it. Why do you form a chapter? You form a chapter because there is a fewer amount of firefighters who think like we do. Our nation America is in a free fall ethically and morally. And in our profession, we have to hold the line. People won't understand it. They won't get why you would place yourself in harm's way. God forbid you surrender your life for somebody else. That's a decision that each one of us makes on our own. No one can order it. No one can deny it. If you have to do it, you have to do it. But we don't want to do that. So we gather together with like minds to get better at it, so we're not selling our lives cheaply, that we do get to go home and hold our kids at night like everybody else. But it's going to cost. And that support group that is built out of the chapter can see you through it. And to maintain that chapter, you have to find a good leader, you have to build a good foundation, and you have to draw a firm line in the ground about what is ethical and what's not. And sometimes it gets very blurry, especially if there's too much alcohol around or too much emotion. Firefighters are especially F.O.O.L.S, are emotional people. We have to be self-disciplined. We have to control ourselves if we're going to get to the end of the race, and we have to run the race well. And Matty Johnson is a perfect example of someone who woke up in the middle of it and said, these are my words, but he realized he had to run the race well if he was going to make it to the finish line. And we all have to do that. And that is the why, is because I'm not here for me. I'm here for everybody else. Somebody is serving the public. Somebody they can trust. And I was in the LA riots in 1992, and we were immune to harm because we were firefighters. We had badges just like the police, but we were safer because even the worst of people in the street knew that we were not there to cause harm. We were there to do good.
The why is just that is we are here for all of us. That's the true definition of brotherhood. So I thank you so much for coming on. I will see you in about 10 days up in Indy. I'm going up with fire tech, so in shift. And then my retirement ceremony is the next day. So yeah, we're going to retire and start enjoying ourselves. We don't have children. It's time to go play. I say that. And then I'm busier. I'm busier now than I was when I was on job. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on, brother. I'll see you shortly.
All right. Thank you for having me.